Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I thought I'd record a video. It's a little bit cold outside, so I thought I'd create a simple card that we can all create if we're lost for inspiration. So sometimes we can get lost for inspiration and we just need something simple to get us going again. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take, where's the stamp set? Have I left it out? I've got that many stamp sets here. I'm going to take this stamp set here and I'm going to use this flower here. I love this flower, which you can't see because it's in polythene, which doesn't really help. So I'm going to use this flower here, which I absolutely adore. Just absolutely love them. So I love this stamp. I just think it's so versatile. Let me just place that back. There we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp the flower onto my Bristol Smooth card, mainly because it's very smooth and I know that the ink will move. Now I've already done the flower, so I'll just colour one of the petals so that you don't have to wait, so that it's a nice quick card for you. So what I'm using Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink. And I'm actually going to stamp with the Salty Ocean. The Distress Oxides, because they've got that opaque element, you can stamp with them beautifully because they're not quite like the Distress inks. The Distress Oxides are a pigment dye fusion, and because they're a pigment dye fusion, they've got that opaque quality. So just allow that ink, as always with any ink, I allow the ink to just rest on the card and just look at that. Isn't that a beautiful image? I just think it's glorious. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take a little touch of water, and because we're using that oxide ink, it means that I can blend out that colour. I can blend it out. So we'll just do a couple of the petals, just so you can see. And if you leave a little white area, it gives some light to your flower. So what you can see, let's just move this up. What you can see is that it blends out beautifully. So what I've done then is I've taken the Salty Ocean and I've added a little bit to my non-stick craft sheet. And what you do is you pick up the more intense colour. So this here is diluted. And then what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more depth. So just adding the richer colour and a little bit more depth. Just at the top. Tops here where the shading is, and then you can just blend that out. So you've just got a little bit more richer colour. Take a little bit of that colour off and then you can blend that out. Just blend that out. Just to give it a little bit more. And then just leave that touch of white area. Just leave this touch of white area just so it gives a highlight. So that's all you need to do. That's your colouring. But what you need to do then is just pick up a little bit more of the darkness of the colour and just go in again and add a little bit more darkness just at the very tips, just to make it a little bit darker. Just make it darker around the tips, and that's all you need to do around the whole of the flower. So I'll bring in the flower. Let's just grab a wipe. So nice simple colouring technique, no products apart from your ink, and when you colour it all, this is what you end up with. And then all you need to do is just add some white dots with your white gel pen just to the centre. Now, I don't need to add any white gel pen now to the flower, apart from the centre. Let me just show you that. Just the white gel pen here. I don't need to add any here because I've left the white areas just so that it gives a bit of brightness and lightness. So that's your flower coloured. So you go from this to this by just colouring that simple method. Nothing too complicated. I said it was a nice quick card, and you're just colouring it with your Distress Oxide Salty Ocean. And what I did was, before I decide on the colour, I always test the colours on my sheet just to see if I've got the right colours that I'm looking for. So always test them on your sheet. So what I'm going to do now is I've got a piece of Pink Frog smooth card, 4.5 inches by 6.5 inches. So 4.5 by 6.5, Pink Frog smooth card. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this stamp. I like to show you how we can mix the old, this is not old, this is new, I don't know what we're calling it old for, how we can mix the previous releases, that's better, with the more recent releases. And I want to use this image here. And I'm going for monochromatic. And I want to show you that you don't have to have stacks of colour. I know we do some beautiful makes with lots of different colours, but sometimes that's daunting to some people, using loads of different colours. So sometimes it's nice to pare it back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same oxide ink, and I'm going to ink up the areas that I want. So I'm inking up those clocks. Let's just pick this up because I'm going to use this as is. Just make sure that you spend a few moments. You can put this on your acrylic block if you wish, but I want a more fluid feel to it. It doesn't have to be perfect for me. It really doesn't have to be perfect. So what I'm going to do then is just remove a bit of the colour just from that and just from that wording there. Anywhere else? And I think I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stamp it as is, just on to my background. And I'm just going to use it without the acrylic block because it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just so that you've got some of that clock image on the background. And that's all I want. Just make sure that you give your stamp a bit of a wipe, because if you go on to the stamp now with your VersaFine Clair ink, your VersaFine Clair ink won't be sort of as detailed because it'll have that cloudy ink the Distress Oxide gives. So just give it a little bit of a wipe. Let's just place that back. And just look at your stamps, how you can use parts of the images, because you can use this part as well, and you can add a few more details to your backgrounds. So just use your stamps. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use this text, but not at the moment. Let's just put this Salty Ocean down. And what I'm going to do is just spritz that with water, just so that it moves a little bit. So I've just spritzed that with water just so that that will move a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just give it a few moments just for the water to react with the ink a little bit, just so that it makes it a little bit more vintage. And then I'm going to use a piece of dry kitchen roll and just blot that, just so that it makes it a little bit more vintage. There we go. So I don't want to make the background, I want the background to be quite loose. So as you can see that you've got a few little runs there. Not too many, but it just shabbers it up a little bit. Let's just move this out of the way. So if we take this flower stamp, let me see if I can grab it. It takes me longer to get it off the plastic. So we're just going to use this bit of text here on the stamp. Just because you've got a whole stamp doesn't mean you have to use the whole thing. You're just using your stamp in different ways. I've got a little bit of scrap card here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check what the Paradise VersaFine Clair looks like. Just stamping those words. So I can stamp it and just put that against my card just to see. Yes, that will go quite nicely. It's a little bit darker, which is perfect. But you could also do your second generation. So let's take this, let's stamp it and then have a look at the second generation. You see, the second generation is more like that colour. So it's up to you whether you want the second generation or you want the darker colour, or you want both. So I'm going to take that text. So it's a little bit of text from the floral stamp. We're not even using that floral stamp. So let's add a little bit of the text. So you've got your first generation and your second generation. So you've got your first and second generation. So we'll take a little bit more of that stamping and we're just extending the stamping. We're just extending it a little bit. So there's first generation. Let's do a little bit of second generation on here. First and second generation. So we'll take a little bit more first. Add the first generation and add the second generation. So you're just extending that touch of stamping. So this is your VersaFine Clair Paradise, or whichever blue that you've got that works quite nicely with your project. Just give my hands a wipe because I've touched that stamp. I won't put that away at the moment just in case I want a little bit more. So what I'm going to have then is my blue flower. So it's going to be a monochromatic make so that my blue flower will go on here. Now, what I might do is just add a little touch of brown because I think I'm going to add it to craft card. So even though it's quite monochromatic here, let's just see if I can find the right one. Just add a little touch of frayed burlap. And I've got a little bit of acetate. So, acetate and frayed burlap. Now, what you have to remember is you just want a little touch. Now, the reason I'm adding this little, the reason I'm adding this little bit of brown is I'm going to add it to craft card. So I just want to add a little touch of brown. And yes, obviously, your Distress Oxide will react, but you just want to add little touches. So this is the reason I was going, do I, don't I? Because I just wanted to make sure that I don't overpower it too much. So just a little bit of the brown, just extend it a little bit here. And obviously on this ink won't be affected because it's permanent ink. Just the oxide, yes. I prefer that now because I'm going to add it to my craft card. So I just prefer that touch of brown. So let's give that a dry. Just give that a dry. And if there's areas you don't want too big of puddles, just give that a little dab. Excuse me. So just dry that. So what it does is it gives it a little bit of a vintage feel to go with the craft card that I'm going to add. Dry it on both sides. That's it. And because it's quite a pale brown, it looks like it's a little bit tea stained, which I quite like. So it looks a little bit tea stained. That is brilliant. So just bend that card. Ouch. So what we're going to do, you see, this will go on here like this. We will add shading and everything. But what I want to do is take my containers stamp, and I'm going to use this one here. This is coming to its own, this stamp set, with all these flowers. It really has come into its own. And it just goes to show that, you know, if you design stamps and you make sure they all work together, it all does come together. It works beautifully. So we just want a piece of card. Let's move that out the way. Let's grab our black ink pad. There we go. I'm glad I didn't put that flower stamp away. So just stamp the pot. And I'm just using my fingers to place that pot back on the carrier sheet. So I just need to make sure my fingers are clean. So what we're going to do is we'll use the frayed burlap. And we'll add a little bit of shading to the pot. And we'll just add a little bit of shading to that pot. Just with the frayed burlap. And if you just leave a little bit of an area again in the centre, just as you blend it out, just leave an area in the centre that just gives that highlight to the pot. So just adding that colour, and I'm just leaving this area here just to give it a little bit of a highlight. Just add a little bit of that colour on the inside as if that's like the soil. So just add a little bit, leave a little bit in the centre to give it that highlight. Just gives it a little bit more life. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that flower stamp again with that text on. And let's see if we can pick a little bit of detail. There we go, on the pot. So I'll cut this out and then I'll show you the pot. Because we've got that little bit of text on. You don't need to leave a white border around your pot, just cut it out as is. And when we mat and layer it onto the craft card, you'll see it just comes to life. There we go. Let me just show you. Can you see that you've got that little bit of text on the pot? Just so that you can see that. So the pot is going to go here. And my flower, which you need to shorten or else it's going to be far too long. So let's just shorten that. Shorten the flower just so it will go here like so. Just so that it goes like this. And we will add a little bit of shading, etc., just to add to that pot. So do I want any of my sisal nest? I think we will. But what we need to do is we need to give that a little bit of shape. Now, if you've got a mouse mat or anything like that, you can use a mouse mat, and you can use all your professional tools. If you've got your ball tools, this is my professional tool, is the back of my scissors. And just add a little bit of life to those flowers, just so that it actually becomes domed. It just gives it a little bit more life. Let's do the same to those little leaves as well. There we go. Just so that it gives it a little bit of life, and you can see it's quite domed. So let's grab some of that sisal nest. We'll just grab a little touch of the sisal nest. Plus, you know how much I like you to make a mess of your desk because it gets everywhere. Let's just grab a little bit of that sisal nest. Don't want a big clump like that. So this is what my sisal nest looks like. Just a ball of fluff. So it's just sisal nest. And let's add a little bit of cotton as well, we will. So we're just going to take some 3D tape. A little bit to that top flower. There we go. So we're just going to sandwich the sisal nest just in between the 3D. Look at that, just picks it all up. The bits that you haven't picked up, get rid of them, chuck them on the floor like I normally do. And then just take another piece of the 3D foam just to add over the top, like so. We'll add a little bit of adhesive just to make that a little bit more permanent. And it also allows me to move it if I don't get it in the exact spot, just in case. Just bend the pot around your finger. There's always different ways of adding just life to your projects. You don't always have to have fancy tools. So add the pot with some 3D foam. You can also use your ultra thick gel as well if you wish. Give me some manoeuvrability. So let's move this out the way. Let's move everything out the way so you can see what I'm doing. We just add this here. And now we're going to add, and what we haven't done, which we should, you need to add some adhesive just down on the stem so that you can stick that stem down. just take this and just, there we go, we can now press. So just hold that down, just so that it grabs hold. So then this is what you've got so far. The sisal nest and the shaping of the flower just gives it a little bit more life, for me personally. Right, let's add a bit of shading. There it is. Let's add a bit of shading. So we're going to add a little bit of shading just around the pot. There we go. Got this flower sticking up. Let's just take a little bit of water and let's just shade that out. Just to add a little bit of shading to that pot, just so it sticks out a little bit more. And just use the ink that you've got on your water brush and just add a little bit of shading just around the flower, just around this little bit here. There we go, just so that, let me show you that shaded, just so you can see there's a little bit of shading just around the side of the pot. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more oomph now, a little bit darker stamping to the background. So I'm using my Nocturne Versafine ink and I'm going to use that flower stamp again, just parts of the text. I'm going to add a little bit of black stamping just to the background, just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more oomph. So just add a little bit of black stamping. It just gives it a little bit more life. So just give it a little bit of stamping. The black will just give it a little bit more oomph to the design. Just add a little tiny bit of the black to the pot. There we go. Just gives it a little bit more oomph, that does. We'll just place that on one side and then we'll grab some washi tape, which I should have on the desk, which is already on the desk. So I'm going wandering off and it's already on the desk. So just add a little bit of washi. And I spend more time fiddling with the washi than anything else. So add a little bit there. So I'm going to add a little bit of the washi just down the side here. And then I can turn that over just to add a little bit there. And then we want a little bit more. Okay. Stay on there. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit going down the side. And then again, I can turn that over just to give it a little bit of black. And then what we'll do is we'll just add some white splatters. Just add some white splatters to your card. And then while we're doing the splatters, let's move that out of the way. We'll take the Salty Ocean ink, spritz that with water. Nobody needs that much ink, but Tracy did. So just add a few splatters of the ink. Nobody needed that much ink. Let's move this all out of the way. Let's just clean that up. So just leave that on one side at the moment, just while that rests, because you've added all those splatters, etc. So let's grab our little birds and put this one back. There we go. So we'll just take our little birdies. Let's use that scrap of card again. And my birds don't want to stick because they're so well used. There's that much embossing powder and everything else on the back of this poor stamp that it doesn't want to stick. So just give it a wipe. And then we can ink just with our VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. Just to add, I only want one of the birds really. So I always ink all three because then I can use the other two birds on something else. But it's only one bird that I want. Just add this back to my stamp set. And let's just cut that bird out. Can't pick the card up. I like to work with a smaller piece of card, so we'll just move that out the way. Just take the little bird, and I'm just going to add a little white border around, just so he pops a little bit more. So just slip then, just add a little white border just around your bird. There we go. So we've got our little bird, which I'm going to place just on the pot here, because I just think it's a nice little touch adding him to the pot. So let's add that to the pot. So add our little bird, and let's just drop him on the card. And again, is there any glue left on there? So just add that. So just so your bird is nicely on the pot. Now what we can do, if we want, let's have a look at what he looks like. We can also add the little hedgehog. So we've got the hedgehog or the squirrel that's on the Key Botanicals stamp set. So let's stamp our little squirrel. Hedgehog. Oh dear me, don't even know the difference now. It is a shame, isn't it? I don't even know the difference. So just stamp our hedgehog. Let's just place him back. I always place the stamps back because I know what I'm like. The little ones will go missing. Although this hedgehog is a reasonably good size, he could be used on a card just on his own. So I'm just going to just cut out my hedgehog, and I'm just going to just do little different sort of lengths of the spiky, just to, he's got to have some spikes. So I'm just going to make sure that I don't just cut all the spikes. I'm not going to obliterate all of them, is what I'm trying to say. I want to leave some of those spikes in, because that's why I put them there. Just so that you'd leave some spikes on his body. You only have to cut them sort of the same shape, just to give him a little bit of a spiky body. We don't want one that hasn't got no spikes. Can't be a hedgehog then, can it, if it's got no spikes? So make sure he's got some lovely little spikes. He should be called that, shouldn't he? Spike. That was too predictable, Tracy. So just cut out, just go up and down in different areas, just to give the illusion of those spikes, and go up and down at different heights, just to give that illusion. There we go. And the rest of him is super easy to cut out. His little feet, etc. So very easy to cut out. There we go. Let's just chuck that over there. So let's just add a little bit of shading to him. So we'll use the frayed burlap. So really we've not used too many colours or too many sort of mixed media projects. And just give him a little bit of colour. You could just mop up this colour. You could just spritz it and mop up the colour. So just give him a little bit of colour. Let's pick up some of that darker colour and let's give a little bit of shading, so that he's just not all one tone. Pick up the darker colour and just add a little bit of the darkness, just so he's not just one colour. There we go. And then you can either, I often look in the camera, because you can either place him here right by the pot, or you can place him walking away from the pot. Now I can't make my mind up. I might just place him there right by the pot. We're going to place him there, and let's give him a little bit of depth. So just add a little bit of 3D foam to him, but before we add a little bit of 3D foam, let's make sure that he's got a little bit of a rounded body. You don't want him totally flat. There we go. We will add some wording as well. So just add the little hedgehog just near the pot. So we've got the hedgehog and the little pot. Very sweet. Very sweet indeed. So what we can do is we add this to a piece of craft card that's 1/4 of an inch bigger. So this is 4.5 by 6.5. So just leave 1/4 of an inch mat of craft card. just give this card a little bit of a bend, because you've had lots of moisture on it. It's going to try and work against you. So just add some of that adhesive. Just to your card. And I always stand up just because it's so much easier just to see if you just need to move your card a little bit. And because that card is trying to work against you, because it's got that moisture that's still in the card, just spend a few minutes just pressing that against the craft card. Just press it against the craft card. Then I'm going to add it to a white mat that's 5 inches by 7 inches. So the white mat is 5 inches by 7 inches. And just remember, craft card is very absorbent, so make sure that you add enough adhesive. So that's 5 inches by 7 inches. Again, leaves a 1/4 of an inch gap. Just make sure that that sits. And then what we've got is a 5.5 inch by 7.5 inch craft card blank that I've just made out of craft card. I just buy A4 craft card. Just add that to that bigger mat, because it just really brings everything to life. So just take your time adding your mat, just to make sure that all comes to life. And you can see that on the craft card, it really does bring it to life. It brings it to life. Just adding it to the craft card. And then just to echo that craft card a little bit more. Where have I got it? We've got a little lollipop stick. So I only need part of it. So I'll just hold this stick so it doesn't flate everywhere. Use the back of my scissors, and we'll just use part of that stick. Let's move this out the way. And then from the containers set, if you look on the containers set, it's got these figure 1s, 2, 3, 4. So we'll just use one of those. Let's use figure 2. So we'll just use figure 2. You can't see it because that's got the writing on. So we'll just add that figure 2 there. So what I want to do is just add this sort of here, there. So I need my stamping. Where's my black ink pad? Take my figure 2. And I need to stamp it going down here. Just on that lollipop stick. There we go. And then I can add this just to my card, and it just echoes that natural feel. Just lift that up a bit. It just echoes that natural feel of the craft card. Let's just lift this up. Okay. Make sure we get rid of that adhesive. There we go. Just so that you can see, we've just added that little tiny little detail, which just adds to it. And if you want, you can add a white sentiment. What have we got? Essence of Nature, New Beginnings. What have I got on the stamp set? I think I'll just use my Bring On the Sentiment stamp set, and I think I'll just use the word dream. Or you could use Special Moments. See, there's that many sentiments on here. Or you could use One of a Kind. Let's use One of a Kind. Let's use One of a Kind. I like to mix all the stamp sets up because I want you to use them. I don't want them to be gathering dust. Let's bring that little scrap of card in that I keep using over and over again. You don't need to press hard with the sentiments at all. So we'll just, where's my scissors? We'll just take this. I'll just make sure that I save that flower because I could cut it out for another project. So just making the sentiment a little bit thinner so there's not too much white card. Just so that we've got that little bit of white card, because then it echoes the white matte and layers as well. That's that there. Just look in the camera. Yes, we'll add a little bit of shading so that that doesn't get lost in the background. If we add a bit of shading, that will just pop. There we go. I always end up with sisal nest, just somewhere I don't want it to be. So we'll just give that a few seconds just to grab hold. And then, do you know, there's this barcode that I've got on my stamp set. And I'm going to take this barcode and I'm going to ink up some of those lines. And I'm just going to add some of those lines just to the background. Wrong side, Tracy, I would still use that one. I'm just going to add, oh yes, this barcode could end up being a stamp that I end up using over and over again. It just adds that little, it adds that little detail. Just not too over the top, but it just adds a little detail. Yes, I like that. Let's just place that there. We just need to add, now just make sure, this is where you can get finger marks on your card. Just make sure your fingers are nice and clean. Oh, I have got so much stuff on my desk now. Let's just add a little bit of shading, which is really easy when you've added sisal nest and everything else to your background. I decided against adding the cotton when I'd added the sisal nest because I just thought it was enough. So just, there we go. It's just easier for me to turn the card around than it is trying to get my hand in funny positions, just to make that sentiment pop a little bit more. There we go. That barcode's going to be pulled out a little bit more now. I've used that. So just so that you can see that, that is your card finished. Look at Spike the Hedgehog. what we need to do, Spike needs a little dot in his eye there. And we just need a little bit of white going down here. Just like so. Let's add some touches of white to Spike's little spikes. And the good thing is I've left the white here. I've left the white here just to give me some of that shading and some of that lightness. So just so that you can see the detail, the depth. And in real life, it's fab. Just love it. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you'll give it a go. I look forward to seeing your interpretation, and I'll see you all soon. Love to all. Bye for now. Oh, before I go, don't forget to do your insert. Add an insert and maybe stamp just the flower. Don't forget that. I nearly forgot that. Don't forget to add your insert. So speak to you all soon. Bye for now.